Hey, what's up? Liron here. Thank you for joining me in this video. Now on Sunday, I was a little frustrated. So I was trying to paint this from the reference photo I'm going to show you right now, and I just couldn't get the result I wanted. So I decided to stick to it, do another iteration, and then I got this one, which I'm fully pleased with. Now, a big part of the technique here was wet and wet in order to get those smooth transitions. And you'll notice this isn't a reference photo. I'll often paint the kind of light and shadow conditions like this one. So the big part here was the wet and wet technique, which is why today I want to demonstrate this using this painting, okay? We're going to paint this one, and all of these soft transitions, I'll show you how I achieve them in wet and wet, and how in fact you get most of the painting done in wet and wet, and later you only have to add the darker shadows, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Let's take it to the table and get started. So let's get started. Now I'm going to try doing this real time. Unlike the last couple of videos, I do want to try it out, and hopefully I can keep my focus. Now, a couple of important things. I use the grid method to draw this, which means you add a grid onto the paper and a grid onto the picture, the reference photo, and then you use that to find the different proportions. I did that because partially I was lazy and I just wanted to get the drawing out of the way, and because faces are complex. So I will include a high quality photo of this stage so you can trace it, you can recreate it, and join me for the painting stage, okay? Now I'm going to work monochromatically, so I don't really care about the mess I have on my palette. It's going to be just kind of black, White Knight's black. I don't remember which one it was, but it's a really good one. I'm going to write it down below. Now, here's the idea. What I want to do is pre-wet the paper and skip the highlights like you see here on the lip, and just in the highlight here in the eye, but just a few selected places. Other than that, I'm going to pre-wet everything, and this is going to be similar to my process with the horses, in which I did a lot of wet and wet to get some of the effects I was after, okay? So it's one of those processes, and I think it is an important technique to practice, because if you look at this portrait, it's not the one I usually will go for. And the reason is because there are so many gradual changes. Now, for these gradual changes, I find personally that I have to use this technique, wet and wet. I have to make these gradual changes from light to dark. I have to work with while the paper is wet so that I get the soft transitions, okay? This is basically it. So I'm gonna leave some highlights on the lip here, and then I'm gonna cover everything up. The tank top is a little white and light, but it's at the edge of the paper, so I'm not gonna concern myself with it. Now, after we pre-wet everything, I wanna go over everything again, just to make sure it's really thoroughly wet and that I haven't missed any key places. Now you see I already painted some of the patterns of light and shadow, and I'm going to inject some paint into them, okay? Now look at how much movement I have here. The paint is still very wet, okay? And the reason is I'm going to start very gradually. You see? I'm starting to just pour in the paint, and you get this gradual transition from light to dark, but it's very soft. We're maintaining the edge's softness. If there isn't enough movement, you just come back with some water and you help it move, you see? But that's a little too much, so let's get rid of some of that. And the beautiful part is you can still work it while it's wet. This entire left side, in fact, I'm gonna put that in some kind of a shadow, okay? And you see how much I can play around with it before you commit to any final shapes. Right now we get some very soft transitions. I'm still unhappy with this section. It's a little too dark, so I'm just gonna lift back some of the paint once again. And what I want to do is, while this is drying, I'm gradually gonna add values, okay? I'm gonna add more and more and more slowly until it's fully dry. Okay, that's the principle behind working this way. So you want to pay attention really to where all the values are. For example, the upper lip is really dark, so I can just go ahead and start darkening it. Now, one thing to contemplate and remember, and by the way, if this starts to dry, you can spray some water on it. One thing to contemplate is you want to start from the center of shape. So for example, this is a dark shape, I'm starting from the center. Why? Because I don't know how much movement I'm gonna get. So I'm working my way from the center outwards. It's a bit of a safer way to make sure that it doesn't run too much. Okay, so you want to err on the side of caution with where you place the different the different shadows, okay, just when you get started, because there's quite a lot of movement on paper. Now we get a shadow here as well, and look at how beautiful these soft transitions are, okay? And once this dry, I'll be able to start adding in the stronger shadows, the clearer shadows, you know, all of that. But I don't want to stop until I got everything I need, or almost everything I need in. So we're gonna continue, okay? I'm gonna soak out some of the water in the brush. I'm gonna lift some of this section again. I'm gonna show you another section here, you see, just making it a little lighter, okay? And again, while it dries, I can continue injecting some paint. So this has to be darker, so let's just put in that darker value. Now it may seem a little too dark, but remember, it's gonna dry a little lighter, because there's still a lot of water here. This section seems darker. In fact, all of this area and the edge of the hair is way darker, so we can just go ahead and darken it up, you see? It's not gonna be perfect. Again, you're giving up a lot of control because it's still all wet, but that's the idea, okay? That's the entire idea. You wanna get that softness in, and as much as you can, continue layering more and more and more details while it dries. Let me show you in the light. You see how it starts to dry, but it's still wet? The more you can add at this stage, you can get away with a lot more because of the wetness on paper and the movement and the gentle, relatively gentle shapes you're gonna get. So here you see darker shadows. So I'm just starting to put those in. There's a darker shadow here above the eye. Then if I want to add a bit of water, sorry that it may look strange because the light from the outside is changing a lot for some reason. The sun comes in, comes out. So sorry about that. Using a natural light almost always. So here it goes a little darker. Here it goes a little darker as well. Now I know it may seem like a bit of a mess right now, but don't worry because, and I'm going to start putting in the background too, because why not? But don't worry about that. It's all going to work itself out once we add in the sharper shapes, okay? So you really don't have to worry about it looking a little strange right now. That's fine. And if I can, I prefer to merge. You see here, I'm connecting her hair with the background, because what this does, it's just going to help us down the line to simplify this area, okay? So you don't need any harsh edges here. This entire thing is dark. Okay, so we go like this, and then if you want to run through some lines through the hair like that, just to get a bit of a, you know, feeling of hair, but later on we'll, of course, we'll make this area a little more distinct, a little easier to read with some clearer shapes. Right now our eyes don't have anything to focus on, and things may seem a little strange, but that's exactly it, okay? It's really just like with the horses, and with this kind of a technique, as long as it's still wet enough, you want to continue exploiting that fact and keep going more and more with the dark colors. Now here you see I didn't get enough movement. I'm actually going to add a bit of water. Hopefully that won't backfire on me, you see? Just to soften this up a little bit, because things have started to dry. So this happens. Now I don't see any too striking shadows. Let's add a bit more to here. Just under the eye, this area. It seems a little darker, so we go like that. And it's very misleading right now. Some areas look really dark, but they're gonna dry lighter, and you won't get as strong of values as it may appear right now. You see, this is a good opportunity to put in the shadows for the nose, because it's starting to dry, so you get less movement, so some control. Now, if you want less movement, you want to use thicker paint on the brush, and sometimes you will use almost a dry brush into wet, okay? That's something that can also help with achieving some of the effects we're after here, for less movement, okay? Now, this gets to the point where it's starting to dry, and I don't want to push it too much, so you see here it starts to dry. So what I'm gonna do is allow it to dry, and let's fix some of that shape, some shadow here, because I'm gonna start getting some backgrounds soon. So I'm gonna stop here, and hopefully we'll get something nice to work with once it dries, okay? In fact, this area has started to dry, so I don't want to work into that anymore. So we'll wait for this to dry, and then we'll patch everything up with some additional clearer shapes. So it's fully dry. Now I do want to show you, and I may have shown you this in the introduction, this is the painting that really pushed me to do this experiment. I did this one 2 days ago, I believe, and I really was able to get that control, that fine control and transitions in here. Here you see, so there is quite a bit to work on in terms of technique. I went too late here. It's really important for you to see my mistakes as well. I went too late here, so you get these weird, awkward shapes. Same for this side, same from here. But I still got some good gradual transitions that I'm happy with and will give me enough to work with in the next stages, okay? So smaller brush right now, and we're just gonna start putting in the shapes we see, the darkest shapes actually is where we're gonna start. And this is very similar to drawing in many ways, so you don't have to worry as much, you know, about the technique, and I love that stage. Now, we may end up after this stage feeling like it's still not where it should be, okay, and then we may fix some of the gradual transitions. But I actually want to first put in those darks and see how they look together with the painting. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, along the way, if I do get to a point like this where, okay, the shadow here needs to be a little darker, I will add some more watery wash to it and add that in. Okay, I will add some of these in like that and blend their edges as necessary. Okay, so here, for example, we can blend that edge, and also here around the bottom. For now, I'm not gonna go darker here on this edge of the nose. But again, the main thing I'm after here is the details that are in the fully dark, okay, like fully black. So I'm going around like that. You see there's the eyelid, some interesting details there, and this is really similar to drawing. It's much easier than the, you know, having fine control, wet and wet. And I do want to say that you want look at how long I actually take for this stage. Okay, I take my time with it. It takes time. It requires focus, and very often I see that the issue with some of my students' works is they're in a hurry, just too much in a hurry. Take your time, especially with these fine shapes. You know, these shapes are really gonna dictate how much likeness there is to this portrait. So how much it actually looks like the model, or the other way around, it doesn't look like the model. So you really, and here I used way too much water, so that's fine. I'm gonna pick them up. Maybe you caught that. It's very easy to sometimes forget to dry the brush fully. In fact, I'm gonna get some tissue so that I can do that. And now I'm gonna add in the pupil, some shadows within the eye. Actually played in my favor because now I got some softer edges. Now, you see there are all sorts of details there. So for example, you get this line of the, you know, crease, wrinkle, as you'd call them, some eyelashes. You know, the thing that really pushed me to try this with this portrait, the one here, was that I did an attempt, and it turned out really not the way I wanted it to, and the beauty of the subject, the model, was lost. And I felt a little frustrated, to be honest with you, that I couldn't capture the beauty properly. And so I did another try, which is the one I just showed you, and then it really worked out well. And it made me very happy. I felt like my goal for that day should have been, let's try and capture beauty. And part of that is getting the likeness as well of the model. You know, every model will have something beautiful. So if you want to convey that beauty, and I'm gonna go take a leap of faith here and actually merge these two shadows together, hopefully that will work out. But again, if you want to capture the true nature of the subject, it can be hard, and this is why I wanted to retry until I got it right, you know. So here we have this just pure black color, and we have to put it here on the other side as well to make it look like a nostril, okay? Now, by the way, a topic I do want to do more of and discuss is anatomy. I believe I already posted a video on that, but if not, it's going to be out soon. I'm trying to see how I can combine the drawing with painting in a way that teaches them well. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So this is a little overworked, but hopefully it won't ruin everything. Again, I'm taking some chances here. Now the lip here. Very, very nice. I love that deep shadow. Remember, the light comes from the top, so the upper lip is in the shadow, which leads to this really beautiful look and contrast. So here we go. I switched to a bit of a wetter mix here around the right side because it goes a little lighter. Not too light, but just a little bit. Hopefully that part isn't boring. I know I always say this and then you're really nice and you comment that no part is boring, really. So I really appreciate it because I know it's a little bit like, you know, just looking at me render the different areas. Now, and that can, I guess, be maybe boring to some, but from what I gather from most comments, it's not. So thank you so much. My hand is a little shaky, that's fine. Sometimes specifically when I have to be super accurate, it goes a little shaky on me. Here we go. Now, one thing you want to pay close attention to is we left some highlights, right? Now I want to add the shadows next to them to really convey that these are wrinkles in the lips, which everyone has really. So let's go for it like that. So what happens is, next to a highlight we have a shadow. So here we go, one next to this highlight, one next to this, a bit of them here. And you want these shadows to follow the round shape of the lip, you see, like that. We also have them up top, and they follow the shapes of the lip, okay? And that's important for conveying their shape. So yeah, here we go. The shadow under the lower lip, it has to be stronger and more organized. So once again, I'm gonna try, without ruining it or getting too uneven transitions. It's just really hard to get smooth transitions on top of a layer of existing paint. Very often I find that to be the case because the paint has less malleability, if that makes sense, once it's not the paper under it, but rather another layer of paint. Now here I feel like this needs some strengthening, so I'm going back to these areas and just adding some details within the shadow. Okay, hope that makes sense. I will need to maybe strengthen this area, but again, I don't want to overwork this one too, so I may quit earlier than I would have otherwise, because I want to keep this one simple for you and also short and sweet. I don't want this video to be too long, and it may already be a little too long. I have tons of other things I want to film. I want to film for you the free course. I will work a lot on filming this month, so yeah. So here we go, the eye and shadow, and hopefully it starts to connect as a shape, as a face, sorry, and it hopefully looks nice. Let's get some water in here to darken this lighter spot. I actually like this shadow. I don't think I'll have to touch it anymore. So you see the initial wash we did with Wet n Wet really did help us quite a lot here and saved a lot of gritty edges blending and so on, and it's really something you want to at least try because it's so much more efficient and at times that why not give it a go, you know. So here we go, like this. It's just a more efficient technique in many different instances, so you may want to use it. Now here I'm going fairly abstract. I don't need too much. This is too strong. Let's go like that. And so now we're starting to really frame the face nicely. Now I don't want to go too much into, again, details on the facial features. What I want to do is start darkening the area around. And even that won't be as black as it is in the reference photo because this is all going to be a little lighter key than the original reference. So here we go, one brush mark like that, and hopefully it came out accurately. And if you want to darken it, just pour some paint into it. Okay, there we go. This completely merges with the edges here, and then you barely get to see some of the hair. Now the hair is much darker, so what I'm going to do is just go back with some water. See? And I help the dark paint move into the hair. Okay, I hope that makes sense. This area should, in fact, be a little darker, so here we go. Around the edge of the face, like that. Actually have my water sprayer in my backpack and I'm a bit lazy to take it out. But I probably should at some point. So here we go. Around this, around the neck. We're really nearly done with this. Again, it's a rather quick demo. I want to keep this one simple. And you see, and with time you learn how the water and paint will behave once mixed, once you add, for example, now clear water next to dark paint. You slowly learn how to manage these things and still keep the painting looking fresh and accurate and getting the values you want. Now let's go for this section here. Again, I'm going to keep this a little lighter than the original. I have a phone call, one moment. Yeah, so sorry about that. It was actually important, so it's a good thing I answered. So here we continue making our way around the hair, adding the background. And now I do want to preserve the fact, and notice how looser I am right now. I want to enjoy this stage, which is really can allow for that looseness, but I'm still merging, you see, the background with the hair, just to keep it simple for the viewer, to not have too many hard edges, because I already have quite a lot of them. I do think the likeness is really nice here. It does look a bit like the model, but the technique could definitely be improved. Now I'm going to flip this around just so that I have an easier time getting in these shapes with the natural sort of movement of my hand. I'm going to greatly simplify the hair here, and then add some areas of shadow to the bottom section. So this actually goes like this. And the shape of the hair overall on a macro level will be clearer using the shadow in the background that I'm going to strengthen right now. So it goes around like that, you see? And then you know that the hair goes in this direction, okay? So this painting really took a loose turn here, which I love. And just while it's wet, wouldn't hurt putting in some darker shadows that will help to better show the shape of the hair. I will also blend this a bit. So some clear water. This paint is really strong, so as soon as it hits the water bucket, it's becoming really dominant. So that's one thing that you have to pay attention to. Now I did forget that if the eye is here, I need to actually get this part of the hair in place. Hopefully I don't mess it up too bad. And here we go. And yeah, I think, I'm tempted to stop at this point. I do think there's nice likeness. Let's go over some sections and just very gently darken them as necessary. So what you see here, because I didn't do a good enough of a job, honestly, in the first wash. So here under the eyes, that's a major area for shadows. So I'm gonna just put in this darker paint, like so. I'm gonna try again blending it out the edges so that they don't go too far. So like this. Let's see what else. I think the shadow around the eye on the right can also use some work. Oops, touch the paint. So perhaps like this. This entire area is in the shadow. So let's make this shadow a little stronger. But I do love the fact that there is the likeness here. I think it works out really nicely. There we go, like that. And around the nose, let's make this a little stronger here. And be very careful to not ruin the shape of the nose itself. So like that. And then pull this, I'm gonna connect it. I'm actually gonna connect it all like that. I'm gonna take some risks here because I feel like these details will help. So going like that, softening this into this shape right here and softening this. So just to get a bit of a better understanding of her face, the shape of the face rather. This side of the lip can go a little darker. See, and that will make the highlights a little stronger. Now, honestly, you could continue improving and rendering and re-rendering, but at some point I have to stop, so this is close to it. So let's go like this. And we blended this one. And I think that's good. I think we can stop You see, I'm telling myself that, and then I keep going. Let's get 1 or 2 hair strands here, stray hair strands. And yeah, I think that's good enough. So, as you can see here, I think this is pretty similar. I like the way it looks. Could have done a better job in the initial wash, and to be honest with you, had I worked larger, I'd have more space and maneuverability, so that's also a factor. This one is the same size, but it's really, I think, a bit of a better expression and a bit of better control. You know, when I do things off camera, it's a bit easier to focus. And lastly, I signed this, and now we can remove the tape, so here it goes. So you see some of it got loose because I used a hair dryer to dry it between the stages, and that loosens the tape, and then some of the paint gets through, but still a nice result. And I think it's good to see those clear borders, if you will. Here we go, final result. And now let's wrap it up face to face. So thank you so much for watching, and quite honestly, I wish I filmed this one as well, but as you know, when I don't film, I get to be more focused, the result is better, and then I feel bad for not filming, but if I film, it can hurt the result. So it's kind of a mini conflict I'm going through and figuring out how I can translate my skills onto video and share them fully with you. There is a big difference between when I just paint for myself, just paint freely, and between working for a video. So hopefully I'll be able to close that gap in the future. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you want to learn how to paint like me, be sure to check out the frustration-free watercolor course. The link is always in the description box below. And don't forget to drop a like and maybe a comment on this video. It really helps me reach more people. Subscribe if you still aren't. Thank you so much, I really appreciate it, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.